Cirque Freak, A Living Nightmare. Chapter 10. As soon as Mr. Tall had left the stage and we'd settled back into our seats, the second freak, Alexander Ribbs, came out. He was more of a comedy act than a scary one, which was just what we needed to calm us down after the terrifying start. I happened to look over my shoulder while he was on and noticed two of the blue-hooded people down on their knees cleaning up blood from the floor. Alexander Ribbs was the skinniest man I'd ever seen. He looked like a skeleton. There seemed to be no flesh on him. He would have been frightening, except he had a wide, friendly smile. Funny music played and he danced around the stage. He was dressed in ballet clothes and looked so ridiculous that soon everyone was laughing. After a while he stopped dancing and began stretching. He said he was a contortionist, somebody with bones like rubber who can bend every which way. First he tilted his head back so far it looked like it had been cut off. He turned around so we could see his upside-down face, then went on leaning backwards until his head was touching the floor. Then he put his hands around the backs of his legs and pulled his head through until it was sticking up in front of him. It looked like it was growing out of his stomach. He got a huge round of applause for that, after which he straightened up and began twisting his body around like a curly-whirly straw. He kept twisting and twisting, 5 times around until his bones began to creak from the strain. He stood like that for a minute, then began to unwind really, really fast. Next, he got 2 drumsticks with furry ends. He took the first drumstick and hit one of his bony ribs with it. He opened his mouth and a musical note sprang out. It sounded like the noise pianos make. Then he closed his mouth and struck a rib on the other side of his body. This time it was a louder, higher note. After a few more practice notes, he kept his mouth open and began playing songs. He played London Bridge is Falling Down, some songs by the Beatles, and the theme songs from a few popular TV shows. The skinny man left the stage to shouts for more, but none of the freaks ever came back for an encore. After Alexander Ribbs was Rhombus Two Bellies, and he was as fat as Alexander was thin. He was enormous. The floorboards creaked as he walked out onto the stage. He walked close to the edge, and I kept pretending that he was about to topple forward. I could see people in the front rows getting worried, and some jumped back out of the way when he came close. I don't blame him, because he would have squashed him as flat as a pancake if he fell. He stopped in the middle of the stage. "Hello," he said. He had a nice voice, soft and squeaky. My name is Rhombus Two Bellies, and I really do have 2 bellies. I was born with them, the same way certain animals are. The doctors were stunned and said I was a freak. That's why I joined the show, and I'm here tonight." Ladies who had hypnotized the Wolfman came out with 2 carts full of food. Cakes, chips, hamburgers, packages of candy, and heads of cabbage. There was stuff there that I hadn't even seen before, let alone tasted. "Yum, yum," Rhombus said. He pointed to a huge clock being lowered by ropes from above. It stopped about 10 feet above his head. "How long do you think it'll take me to eat all this?" he said, pointing to the food. There will be a prize for the person who gets closest." "An hour," somebody yelled. 45 minutes, somebody else roared. 2 hours, 10 minutes, and 33 seconds, another person shouted. Soon everybody was calling out. I said an hour and 3 minutes. Steve said 29 minutes. The lowest guess was 17 minutes. When we were finished guessing, the clock started to tick and Rhombus started to eat. He ate like the wind. His arms moved so fast you could hardly see them. His mouth didn't seem to close at all. He shoveled food in and swallowed and moved on. Everybody was amazed. I felt sick as I watched. Some people actually were sick. Finally, Rhombus stuffed the last bun, and the clock above his head stopped ticking. 4 minutes and 56 seconds. He had eaten all that food in less than 5 minutes. I could hardly believe it. It didn't seem possible, even for a man who had 2 bellies. "That was nice," Rhombus said, "but I could have used more dessert." While we clapped and laughed, the ladies in shiny suits rolled the carts away and brought out a new one, packed with glass statues and forks and spoons and bits of metal junk. "Before I begin," Rhombus said, "I have to warn you not to try this at home. I can eat things that would choke and kill normal people. Don't try to copy me. If you do, you may die." He kept eating. He started with a couple of nuts and bolts, which he sucked down without blinking. After a few handfuls, he gave his big round belly a shake, and we could hear the noise of the metal inside. belly heaved and he spat the nuts and bolts back out. If there had only been one or two, I would have thought that he was keeping them under his tongue or at the sides of his cheeks, but not even Ramos Two Bellies' mouth was big enough to hold that load. Next, he ate the glass statues. He crunched the glass into small pieces before swallowing it with a drink of water. Then he ate the spoons and forks. He twisted them up into circles with his hands, popped them into his mouth, and let them slide down. He said his teeth weren't strong enough to chew through metal. After that, he swallowed a long metal chain and paused to catch his breath. His belly began rumbling and shaking. I didn't know what was going on until he gave a heave and I saw the top of the chain come out of his mouth. As the chain came around, I saw that the spoons and forks were wrapped around it. He had managed to poke the chain through the hoops inside his belly. It was unbelievable. When Ramos left the stage, I thought nobody could top an act like that. Turns out, I was wrong.